Good evening, everyone. This is Agile Minds Romania, June edition 2026. We are having another interesting topic tonight and two famous speakers and book authors, Jeff Gothelf and Joshua Seiden, with us tonight to walk us through what changes in the product mindset in this age of AI. We welcome everyone to participate in the workshop, the discussion. After the discussion, we'll have a Q&A session towards the end. And there's no really rules of interaction, but if you need anything, just raise a hand or ask a question in the chat. We're here to help. Me, Florin, and Christina are co-organizing hosts of Agile Minds Romania, and everybody else is a guest. Feel yourselves included and have a good time. So before we start, we know Jeff and Josh from their books, from their famous books, right? Maybe we went through, I don't know, things like outcomes over outputs, right? Or Lean UX, maybe that's the first one to remember. And more recent work related to OKRs, like who does what by how much, or sense and respond, which is embodying the way of thinking they represent in the world of product management. So welcome them from this, I don't know, perspective as trendsetters and mindset creators for product people. And we're happy to have them tonight here. The mic is yours, Jeff, Josh.
Amazing. Excellent. Thanks, Mihai. Hi, folks. Nice to be here. Thanks for joining us today. Josh and I are gonna do a bit of a presentation, and we're gonna facilitate that presentation in a mural rather than slides, because we've gotten pretty used to facilitating our talks this way, and we like it, and it's fun, and it's a little bit more interesting and dynamic than slides. The conversation that we're gonna have today is it's gone by a few names, but the focal point here is outcome-centered AI. And the reason for this conversation is because, I mean, I don't know the statistic, but if I was to guess, I would guess that a very, very high percentage of anything that AI gets prompted for is an output, right? Build me a landing page, write me a LinkedIn post, create a PRD, synthesize this data into and provide a report, right? Everything that it produces, not everything, but I would suspect that the majority of the things that it gets that AI is producing right now is output. And while certainly there is value in that, and there's a need and there's a place and time for that, one of the big questions that we asked ourselves a lot about was, well, what would happen if we prompted AI for an outcome, right? Rather than saying, hey, build me a landing page or build me a website or write this code, or instead we said, look, I need to change this customer behavior. What would happen? And would the results that then came out of the AI actually have a meaningful impact on that outcome? Or should we have done it a different way? And so that's what this conversation is about. And it's based in a real life story that we built. Josh is going to tell you that story. And he's going to talk you through about the thinking that we went through and how things looked, how things worked, where things succeeded, what we learned along the way. And then at the end, we'd be happy to answer your questions. If along the way, at any point, you have any questions, put them in the chat. We will capture all the questions in the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, we will work through all the questions that we can find in the chat itself, or you can just raise your hand and talk, or you could type it in the chat at that point. So we're pretty flexible when it comes to that. Okay. But that's the nature of this conversation, right? Well, what happens when you prompt AI for an outcome rather than an output? And so to tell you that story tonight is my friend, Josh Seiden.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. It's nice to be here with you all. By here, I mean, it's very cool to visit Romania virtually. from the East Coast of the United States. So thanks very much for spending some time with me. About 5 years ago, I decided that I was gonna spend some time learning photography. I got really interested in taking pictures, and along the way, I decided that I was going to start sharing my pictures with the world. And I created a photography portfolio site, and I used Squarespace. And I never really liked it very much, but I already had a Squarespace account, and it was kind of an easy, fast way to create a portfolio site. Um, and last summer, I started playing with AI, and I started experimenting with what I could do, and I was generally disappointed with the results in terms of what I could make. But the tools were getting better and better every month. And sometime in, I don't know, maybe it was April or May of this year, I decided to look again at the problem of my portfolio site. And so one Friday afternoon, I sat down and Jeff, if you want to move over to the next board. Um, one Friday afternoon, I sat down and I sat down with Claude and I created literally in 3 hours. Let's go up to just the top of that frame. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, uh, in about 3 hours, I went from zero to a brand new photography portfolio that was launched and online in 3 hours. It was kind of amazing. All I did was prompt Claude, and there was a lot that I didn't know about modern hosting infrastructure. And I just kept asking it questions, and it kept answering them. And boom, there I was. And it was this kind of amazing feeling of being unlocked. And I thought, well, this is amazing. There are so many things that I want to build. And so I started building stuff. I started building I like to go to the photo galleries in New York City, to the art galleries in New York City. And there's no really great comprehensive guide for photo galleries. And I was like, I'm going to make one. I've always wanted one. I'm going to make one. And I'm also somebody who meditates, probably not as much as I should, but I do meditate. And I've always wanted to have a better sort of timer to keep track of my meditation sessions. And and so I started making one of those, and I started making this long list of stuff that I wanted to build. And it was so cool. I was really excited. And it turns out, as Jeff was saying, that I'm not the only person who's doing this, who's got this sort of long list of stuff they want to build. I just pulled this off of Google today. Um, the age of AI has triggered an unprecedented explosion in GitHub usage, driving its user base up, driving the number of commits. Look at this right here. Commits, code commits surged from 1 billion commits in the entirety of 2025 to an unprecedented pace of 275 million per week in 2026. Putting the platform on track to hit 14 billion annual commits just in this 1 year. Like that is a hockey stick spike in the number of commits. And so what is all this stuff? This is, I wrote about this in outcomes over output. This is an explosion of output of stuff that we make. But as we know all too well, right, making stuff and making value are not the same thing. And so I started to think about, well, okay, here I am. I've got my name on the cover of this book about outcomes over output. And yet I'm making this long list of output that I want to create. Like maybe there is a better way. And maybe I should be thinking about this in a more outcome-centric way. And in fact, maybe that's an opportunity for us as an industry to think about this in a more outcome-centric way. And and so I started to think about, well, okay, in my work with teams who are trying to be more outcome centric, what gets in their way? And so the first is what I just experienced, which is output-centric thinking, right? We tend to think first in terms of the thing we want to make. And we don't tend to think early in our process about the result that we're trying to generate. What was the result I was trying to generate with I knew I wanted to make a meditation timer, but what was the outcome that I was trying to achieve, right? So for most of us, our projects start with an idea of what we want to make. The other thing that makes working with outcomes hard, is that we tend not to have the data that we need to measure whether we are creating the outcome, right? So we put a thing in the world. I make my photography portfolio or my gallery site or my meditation tracker. How do I know whether it's working? Well, part of that is that I have to define the outcome that I want. Remember, if you're familiar with this idea of outcomes that I talk about a lot, just as a review for folks, Jeff and I talk about this idea of an outcome is a change in behavior that creates value, a change in human behavior that creates value that is measurable change in human behavior that creates value. In other words, who's the human, does what's the behavior change, by how much, what's the measure, okay? Well, in order to know if we've changed behavior, we have to measure that behavior. And in order to measure that behavior, we have to create data. So I started to wonder, like, what would a process that was kind of fundamentally built on outcome based thinking, what would that look like if we were working with AI? What would an outcome-centric AI product development process look like? And so I put all of my source material. If you know me, you know that I enjoy using Notebook LM. And so I put all my source material in there. I put, the books that Mihai mentioned at the opening. I put Lean UX in there and the outcomes book, and I loaded all of our course material in there from our trainings. And I asked Notebook LM, what would this process look like? And of course, Notebook LM did what all AI tools do. It started by saying, this is a fantastic concept.
You're so smart, Josh.
This is why we all love AI. What a great idea you had, Jeff. Anyway, I started drafting this process, both using the AI, but then also just kind of going back and forth. And I decided to test it. What you're actually looking at now is the mural board that Jeff and I built for a webinar to explain this idea. I wanted to see if other people were interested in this idea. And so I used the process. Jeff and I used this process to create a webinar a couple months ago that sort of followed this process. And so I want to kind of walk you through the sort of big outlines of this process and then show you the prompts that I used to kind of get me through it. And this is all kind of think about this as sort of a first experiment to test out a process idea. And then as a way of kind of piloting it, getting feedback on whether the process is good or bad or what I might want to change about it. Okay. So the process has 5 steps, right? How to be more outcome centric when building stuff with AI. So the first is, let's talk about the outcome first. Like force yourself to talk about the outcome. The second is focus on, like, work your way through a set of possible outcomes to understand what is the best output, or what do you think the best output is to generate that outcome. As you're creating that output, build in measurement tools from the start. right? So don't try to add that on later, but actually build it in from the start. And then after you've built the thing, monitor the results and iterate your output until you get to your target. And then when you're done, go back and analyze what works. Okay, so start with the outcome, figure out the output, build in measurement, continue to monitor, and then retrospect. And so what I did, this was the prompt that I typed into I used Claude for this. Our monthly webinar series generates about 200 signups. Usually our attendance is about 50% of that number. I'd like to make a meaningful improvement to the registration number. I'd like to see 300 people register for this one. So that's my outcome. Who does what by how much? People register for the webinar at a 50% higher rate than usual. Okay. Now I'm thinking about the next prompt is what's the outcome? Excuse me, what do I make? And I had a couple of prompts for this. First was I'm thinking of building a landing page. For the webinar. We've never had landing pages before. We've always directed people directly to the Zoom registration page. And I thought it might be a good idea to have a landing page in between. We've worried, well, if we go to the landing page, they won't click through to the registration. But will the landing page drive more registrations or will it drive less? Fewer, we don't know. And then I also wanted to talk about hosting this in a way that would make it possible to do quick changes, right? Our corporate site is on Squarespace, but I didn't want to host it there. I wanted to have something that was, for a variety of reasons, I didn't want to host it there. And I asked Claude to help me figure out the right output. And so what we got a landing page that we were able to launch on a subdomain, and that would drive us to the registration page. Okay. The other output that we came up with in the course of prompting this was that we wanted to create content marketing pieces for the content marketing pieces that would drive people to the landing page. And so we planned out, meaning me and Jeff and Claude, planned out a series of posts on my Substack, on Jeff's newsletter, on LinkedIn, to drive people to this landing page. Okay. The next prompt is build in measurement from the beginning. And so I had told earlier the Claude that I wanted to build measurement in. And so I said, what measurement framework have you created? And specifically, I want to be able to measure button by button, click by click. And so it created a set of tracking codes that we could implement in Google Analytics so that we could monitor our traffic. Along the way, we were monitoring our progress. And at some point, about a week before the event, I put this prompt in there. We have 230 registrations for the webinar next week. We're ahead of trend. What can I do to drive to 300? And so it suggested a number of tactics that it could push. It looked at the numbers that we had to date, and it told us that the number one driver of registrations was email. And so we decided to add another email to our sequence. And that actually pushed us over the top to our goal. And so at the end, we were able to say, sort of look at the data that we've gathered from Google Analytics, from LinkedIn, from Substack and Zoom, what worked the best. And we were able to produce, it produced for us this analysis of kind of which tools, which emails, which bits of the process worked most effectively for us. Okay. And so that's like a little, that's what I had to share with you today. And the rest of this is going to be discussion. Okay. But to recap, the idea here is it's easy to start, to sit down with Claude and say, I want to build an app. I want to build an app that does X. And if all you want is a little app for yourself, well, that's fine. But if you're trying to create a successful product, you need to sort of think about upfront what success looks like. And then you need to build your product in a way that is going to help you understand whether you are succeeding or not. And that's what this framework is designed to do. It's designed to sort of help you think through in the beginning, what are the outcomes I'm trying to create? And then to step away from the solution, help you brainstorm other possible solutions that might get you to the outcome, to build in measurement from day one, and then to track progress and adjust based on what you're learning. With that, I think we can take questions.
Absolutely. Folks, what questions do you have for us about that story, about that approach, about the techniques that we shared with you? What comes to mind? Does this reflect how you're working? Is it different from how you're working?
My first question for you, Josh and Jeff, is that how do we switch? Because in general, you said you need to switch from thinking about the outputs, thinking about the outcomes. How do you make in an organization this switch? I mean, what are some tactics that you recommend to change this thinking from outputs to outcomes? Because as you mentioned at the beginning, everybody is looking, I mean, when I will get this feature or when I will get this done by when.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. AI, I mean, look, we've been having this conversation for 20 years, but AI has really changed the the variables around this conversation. When we were producing features by hand, artisanally, handcrafted in Brooklyn, places like Brooklyn, for example, um, there was a constraint, and that constraint was humans, right? Even the best of coders and the biggest of engineering teams could only produce so much, and they could produce a lot. There's no doubt about it, but it could only produce so much. AI has fundamentally changed that conversation, right? The barrier to producing features is gone, right? I mean, cost is kind of coming back to limit it, but for a little while there, we had almost like free features for a while, and obviously that's going to change inevitably if these companies are going to be sustainable, these AI model companies. But the point is that now you can sort of, you can not sort of, you can prompt anything into existence. And so this conversation has become exponentially more important because we are getting to a point, we're already there in a lot of organizations where we are making more things than people can consume. We are making more output than people can evaluate. And we're making more stuff than people can prioritize. And so at some point, the human constraint is going to force us to have a conversation that says, where do I pay attention? What's important right now? Right? What actually needs my input to make a decision? And we believe that one of the ways to start to filter through that noise is to say, okay, great. If there's so much stuff being produced, what are we trying to achieve? And which of the things that we've produced do we believe are actually helping us achieve those goals? And the answer to what are we trying to achieve needs to be an outcome. I think that's part of, like, I think that's a new chapter in that conversation, right? We can talk about the older chapters have always been about, well, if you have this feature, what would allow you to do? And then what kind of do we expect that behavior change with our audience and how many of our audience members, right? So you can start to have that conversation. But I think today, part of it is how do you know where to pay attention? How do you know what to prioritize? How do you know what's important when there are piles and piles and piles of things being produced? Um, and a great filter for that is the goal, right? And the goal is we want more people to sign up for the webinar. We want more people to download the app. We want more people to increase the average order size. Okay, great. Now, of the mountain of things that we have, let's filter through that outcome, and that at least starts to give us a sense of where to focus. And I think that a lot of people are getting overwhelmed at work and are craving that lens to help them decide where to focus their attention and their work and their prioritization, because otherwise we're going to drown in output very, very quickly.
I want to add one more thing, which may be the sort of more specific version of that response. Some of it is at an individual level is about just recognizing what we're doing, right? Like you have this moment where you're like, oh, shoot. One of the cool things about AI tools is that we can start to bake those moments of recognition into our context files, right? So I see in a lot of product managers who have implemented a set of skills for themselves. This is a skill to add an issue, right? Here's a skill to make a plan. Here's a skill to specify a feature. Here's a skill to write a requirement. We can bake this kind of outcome thinking into our skills, into our system prompts. Never add a feature to the backlog unless there's an outcome attached to it, right? And I think like having that, like from a practical point of view in, working with AI tools, building these kinds of ideas into our prompts I think it's a really promising way to start implementing these ideas.
Okay. Good.
Thanks for the answers, Jeff. Josh, I think I have something for Florin, just to give an example of how this may look in reality. So I happen to manage a portfolio of outputs. Right? If you don't admit that, okay, that's your problem. But I'm a product-aware person who manages a portfolio of outputs, and I find it hard to do that. And my stakeholders, which are all requesters of those things, are also finding it hard. So I agree with Jeff what he says. It becomes hard to follow, hard to prioritize, hard to manage, hard to do everything. So I had one of those board meetings with people who usually request stuff, and what we agreed is we need, when we create new requests, we need a different thinking. And what we came up with was not a feature request form, but a business case form. It might be a slight difference, but the way we phrase it was, what's your business, right? What's your problem? What's your current problem? What's not working? How would you describe your current situation? How would you describe your potential improvement situation? What benefit would that bring? And I don't know who else is included or who else might help you. So that maybe one tool, maybe to try shift the thinking from the people in the organization, from thinking in terms of what features do I want to what problems do I want to solve.
What's interesting though, look, the organizations that we work with, they all have business cases, right? But the business case is money, right? Like, this will make money. And I think the trick is to get them, right? Sort of between making stuff and making money
What's in
are
between?
outcomes, right? It's the in-between part that's the important section, right? That's where the outcomes are, right? We make a thing, people behave differently, and then we make money. Okay, well, that fuzzy middle is where we need to focus, and then the money will come from that.
Okay. I had an interesting discussion today with someone, and she was saying that basically in her company, uh, the management are asking for features or I don't know things for outputs, but also they provide the solution as well, and they expect their solution to be implemented with AI. And she was really, she asked me, okay, if I'm implementing their solution with AI, what if it's wrong? Then what we do? How we'll approach this? How do we know? Because it's AI. Implementation is not like you take ownership for something like that, as a team, let's say. And she doesn't know how to respond to this situation, actually. Did you
I,
encounter this?
oh, yeah, never.
Never.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the hard thing, and I don't think AI changes it. It just puts more pressure on it, right? Which is your boss, your boss comes to you with an idea,
Yeah.
and the ideas are 99% of the time their output. We're going to make this thing. Okay. So a good boss is willing to engage with you to get to have a conversation about like, okay, here's why I want to do this. Here's my thesis, and here's what I want to build and why. We had I did a project years ago when I was working on Wall Street where the CEO of the company, CEO was a very successful entrepreneur who'd started three very successful companies. And he came to us on I was running the product design team there, and he came to us and he said, I want to build a research platform. We had a trading platform. And so um, the people who used our product were traders, and their bosses were portfolio managers, the ones who made the investment decisions. The traders implemented them. He said, I want to build a tool for the portfolio managers. It's a research tool, and it's going to gather all of the research that sits on their desks. You go into their offices, they've got a ton of research on their desks. We're going to gather it and organize it for them. And we said, okay. And we went out to talk to the portfolio managers. We sent a research team out, and the portfolio managers were like, the reason that stuff sits on my desk is because it's not valuable. I don't want a tool to organize this garbage. Don't do that. Right? And we came back to the CEO and his strategy team, and we said, this is what we found. Nobody wants this. And they all said, well, you guys are idiots. You should do this anyway. And we said, how about this? Let's go take a research trip together. And so the CEO didn't come with us, but he sent his strategy team out with us to do another round of interviews. He trusted his strategy team clearly more than he trusted us. And we went out and we did a road trip. I wasn't on that trip, but my research team that reported to me and the strategy team went out. They spent a week on the road. They traveled to Chicago and California. They met with half a dozen of these portfolio managers, and then they spent the nights drinking together. So they built a lot of trust. And the drinking part is actually important because they built a lot of trust. And then they came back and they said, you know what? That first round of research was correct. The portfolio managers don't want this. They regard this as garbage, and we shouldn't make a product that delivers more garbage to their desks. And the CEO was like, oh, okay. Okay, I believe you now. Now what do we do? Because we have to make customers out of these portfolio managers. And then now we're asking the right question, which is we have to turn these people into our customers. What do they value? And it turned out from that pivot, we created this incredibly successful product, right? Which was to understand what data they did value, what data our company sat on top of. We had a proprietary data set, and we could create a research product from this data that they valued. And so the initial idea, let's create a research product, was right. The first like idea of what that research product was wrong, and doing that collaborative research got us around the problem, right? And so that's a great, I mean, like that took a long time. It was expensive. But that's an example, I think, of how you play that game. And I think that there are ways that you can play that game that are much smaller in scale, which is like, what are the business objectives here? What evidence do we have? Okay, we can build this thing, boss. Sure. What's the evidence that you want to see that this thing is working? Right.
Okay. Thank you. I will have another question, but maybe someone else from the crowd could have the chance to ask something. If not, I will ask anyway. No one? Okay, I can shoot another question. So, from the framework that you presented, Josh, so I saw that many people have difficulties to figure it out what will be the measurements, built-in measurements. So, any tips and tricks for that? Maybe besides the example that you provided.
Well, the measurements are like you start with the outcome. The outcome was we want people to register.
Yep.
Right. And so the measurements are all then what are the small steps that lead to the registration? Okay, we send them an email. The first thing is, do they click the link in the email? Then they go to the landing page. Okay, they go to the landing page. Which button do they click on the landing page? Do they click the first button in under the headline, or do they read it first and click the second button? Right? Those are two different signals. One says the email convinced me. The other one says I wasn't sure. I had to read the rest of the copy, and the copy convinced me. Right? And then when they get to the registration page, if there's more choices to make, we want to be able to measure those. So what you're doing is you're saying, here's the story, right? The user journey, if you want, right? And so each point in that user journey is a potential measurement that's going to tell us something about the journey. They're not all useful. Some of them might be irrelevant, but some of them might be useful. And so the trick is first laying out that journey. And then the second is measuring it. And then the third is understanding, okay, which are the steps that correlate to success, right? And which are the steps that don't seem to have any correlation to success.
Okay, thank you. Cool. Okay, any other questions from the crowd? Because right now I'm happy with the responses. Thank you so much, George, Jeff.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm curious. I have a question for the group if the group doesn't have any more questions for us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. My question is, do you think you might try this? And why not? Can you think of a project coming up where you could use these ideas?
If I'm thinking on my situation particularly, in my professional job I'm doing now, I'm not in the room that makes these decisions at the moment, but I definitely see this being very useful for any type of project, personal, professional, anything that you want to fix you start from the problem and what you want to achieve. So it's simple to me. I mean, I think that's the friction point is not about understanding the framework, but changing the mindset on implementing it, at least in corporate world, and with the people that are used in thinking a certain way and fixing problems in a certain way. So I think you mentioned this at the beginning. It's AI does not fix culture and mindset and
Yeah.
all of that, but the framework seems simple enough. Friction points in companies and organizations are a different story, though.
I mean, the desire has always been make me a thing or make me a lot of
Yeah.
things, because for some reason we still value the production of software as the definition of success. And now all of a sudden you've got software factories on steroids. You can just make more things, right? And I think that intoxication has yet to wear off. And I do like. I've never been particularly optimistic that organizations will move away from outputs towards outcomes sort of wholesale. But I do think that at some point this is going to come like there'll be a moment of reckoning here where there's just going to be too much stuff. And honestly, the cost here, one of the things that we've ignored, like as I said earlier for a little while, is the cost, because it felt like the cost of production has been free since AI became mainstream. But that's coming home. That's going to change here significantly. And so I think the combined impact of there's just so much stuff I don't know what to do with it. And oh my God, it's so expensive to produce stuff again. All this stuff is going to force a different conversation. I hope it's the outcomes conversation. I don't know. I'd like it to be
Yeah.
the outcomes conversation.
So it's interesting you mentioned, Christina, you mentioned the personal goals, right? Because you can apply this framework in personal goals as
Yeah,
well.
I mean,
I,
from the simplest to the most complex
yes, yes.
initiatives.
So what it made me think is when I used calorie counter app, right? Those things don't want to eat too much, and I just wanted to count calories. I wanted the output, the number of calories I'm eating a day, right? That's what me as a customer thought was important, right? To measure the calories. And the stupid app asked me, why do you need this? So how come, why do I need this? The app said, well, do you need it to, I don't know, lose weight? Do you need it to feel better about yourself? Do you need it to be healthier? Do you need it to, I don't know, it showed me a few reasons I could choose from, right? And that felt awkward. Like it made me think, right? As a customer, not all the time we are challenged to think about the outcomes we should be looking after. We are so focused on what we want to count or what we want to get as an output that it doesn't even cross our mind. So I said, well, I probably want to get in better health and feeling better about myself. I don't know, maybe these two. Okay. And then it continued, right? It started asking other questions. So, hey, what do you mean? Are you, I don't know, are you trying to count the calories for me, or what mind tricks are you playing here, right? But in the end, I figure out, well, now I know. I actually know why I'm counting this and why I'm doing. So I think there's a comfort zone for us individually on our personal plans, but also the customers from professional experience have that comfort zone that it's much easier for them to express their needs in outputs. Because they used to relate to them or measure them, or they're more familiar to that style of thinking. And the challenge is the question. So the thing that surprised me in that app was it was asking me questions. Like it made me think of why I need stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Look, and look,
That's an
there's a
example
thing
from
here
me.
too. There's sort of an unspoken reality here that I think we ignore a lot of the time is a lot of people don't know why, right? Why are you building this? Somebody told me to. My boss told me to. The other company has it. The competitor has it. Uh, I saw it in an app and I liked it, right? Like, I mean, people don't really, and when you get yourself into a situation where someone doesn't know why we're doing the work, and especially if that person is in a position of power, they will shut down very quickly and they will shut down the conversation very quickly because they don't want to look stupid.
Yeah, I wrote about this actually in the Outcomes book, and this is a story that the the folks at HBR .org told me, which is that one of the product managers, when she started trying to kind of work with outcomes, she would go to her stakeholders and say, "Okay, you told me you want to put a button on this page. What's the outcome you want?" And none of them could answer the question. And it's not because they're stupid. These are smart professional business owners, right? They just don't think in those terms. And she realized she had to ask the question in a different way. And so she said, she started asking them, what are you worried about on this project? Right? What keeps you up at night? And she said that unlocked, like, oh, I'm worried people won't do this, or they won't do that, or they won't do the other thing. And she started telling the story of the initiative, and that let them kind of find the answer together. And so if you asked me, Josh, what's the outcome you want from your meditation timer app? I don't know. I just want to, I hate my meditation timer app and I want a better one. Well, what do you hate about it? Right? If you had a better one, what would you do more easily? And that would unlock like a couple of questions, but like off the top of my head, I don't know. I just know that I hate this one and I want a new one.
Yep.
Okay, we have time for one more question. If anyone has one more question. Maybe from the crowd.
It's funny because we just talked about asking questions, right? Look, Georgiana turned her camera up, so she wants to ask something.
I was wondering, because all this discussion of outcomes was leading me to what we as Scrum Masters are doing in the retrospectives with the continuous improvement of the entire team and the outcomes we want to achieve, right? We don't necessarily, or at least I'm not necessarily putting any high focus on the numbers, but especially on how is the team evolving, how is the team changing its behavior with respect to the work that we are doing. So I was wondering if all this process is also applying in some way to how the retrospectives can be conducted, right? Because we first are trying to set some goals for us, like we want some improvements in the team, because we do have the why, right? That's what we are introspecting, and we are getting to the why, and then we are gathering data, and afterwards we are trying to put some measurement on exactly what does this improvement of the work would look like, and then we are going to implement this this inside the team. So is this part of discussion also applying to the process of continuous improvement?
1,000% yes.
Okay.
Why? Because, right, one of the things that we want to look at is team behaviors, right? What is the behavior? What are the behaviors that lead to better results for the team, to increased efficiency or productivity or better communication? What are the symptoms of those? Like, what are the behaviors that we can observe that tell us that a team is collaborating well versus a team that isn't collaborating well, or that a team is communicating successfully or not communicating successfully? And so we can look not just at the sort of like, how do we feel metrics or conversation, but also what are people actually doing? Well, every time, I get a deliverable I see Josh give a deliverable, right? There's 27 questions. Okay, so we got to figure out where the communication breakdown is between what Josh is producing and what the team actually needs, because those 27 questions take us, 4 hours in meetings to get through. Okay, great. So our continuous improvement goal is to reduce the amount of questions, right? Or the amount of time that we spend, right, answering questions that probably should have been dealt with in the deliverable itself. Okay. So it's things like any observable behavior in the team is an outcome, and the processes that you put in place are the outputs that are designed to impact that behavior or those outcomes. So this is 100% applicable in that situation.
So what would be the approach to use it with AI? For example, currently how I am using it in retrospective is to create lots of ideas and scenarios for the team retrospectives. What would be other ways to use AI?
Well, again, it depends. I would ask the AI, right? This is well, I'm serious though, but like the whole point of this conversation has been, look, instead of prompting the AI for scenarios or documents or whatever, say, look, my goal is to get the team to improve this behavior.
Yeah.
Right? And here's what I've observed so far, and here's
Yeah.
examples of that in documents. What do you suggest? How might we change this? How might I get them from this behavior to this behavior minus 50%?
Yeah.
I think that becomes a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Georgiana, for the questions, Jeff and Josh for the responses. We need to close the Q&A session because Josh and Jeff will need to leave for another meeting. Thank you so much for being here, for presenting the framework, and thank you so much for the interesting discussions and examples that you provided. And looking forward for the next time, maybe in person. Maybe you could visit Romania sometime.
I've been to Romania several times. I will go again.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool.
All right,
Thank you.
everybody. Thanks
Just
for
can't
everybody.
wait.
Thank
Good
Thank
to
you.
see you all.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, guys, don't just leave. I think Georgiana just gave us something to think about or maybe consider. I made a print screen of the framework that Josh put up and put that print screen of the framework into a mural board. And with Georgiana's scenario, where she wants to improve the collaboration within her team, what do you say? Can we create some prompts that would allow us, going from step 1 to 5, work with AI to get better outcomes with our teams for following those retrospectives? What do you say? Are you up to the challenge? Okay, so let's do this then really quick. We still have about half an hour. It doesn't have to take that long, but if it does, we're still in time. So I will share the mural link which I created with you on the chat. Okay, and if you can please join here. If you're not familiar with mural, it's nothing much. You just drag around, double click to add post-its, and you can zoom in and zoom out to see content. What you have right there is just a mural board with a screenshot of the framework that Jeff and Josh proposed for working with AI to get better outcomes. And now the problem space is Georgiana again. You want to get what from your teams or working with your teams in the retrospectives? What's your purpose?
So let's say so to say a scenario, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for example,
what's
I
to
want,
improve? What's to improve,
yeah,
for example?
the way, for example, we are conducting dailies, let's say.
Okay.
And the issue that I've noticed is that, let's say people don't remember what they did the previous day, and they are starting to say during the daily, I do not remember exactly what I did the previous day. I think I worked on. Let's say this is the scenario that is the current issue at the moment.
So let me add that quickly. Scenario: daily scrums fall into endless discussions about forgetting what was mentioned the previous day, right?
Yes.
Not sure if I'm typing this somewhere. I was supposed to be typing it. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so let's look at step one. And how would you write a prompt to actually define the outcome you're looking for? Ideas from anyone, right? So if I were to have a good improvement to this problem, which I just picked from Georgiana, what would be the meaningful outcome, like the change in behavior from the people in the daily Scrum, from the developers? What do you think this might be, or how do we phrase
the change in behavior is it will be to discuss about the progress towards the sprint goal.
Okay, so now then, how would you describe this problem to an AI to define your outcome or the desired result? Let me just lock the board so you can maybe add. Let's add the prompts to the left, right, for each item. We can take ideas from anyone and then collaborate to phrase them more closely to what fits.
Something like our daily scrums are falling into endless discussions about not remembering what was mentioned the other day. I would like to make meaningful improvement by focusing the discussion towards the progress, by focusing the discussion to the progress towards the sprint goal.
Oh, am I writing in caps? Sorry for that. By focusing the discussion?
By focusing the discussion on the progress towards the sprint goal.
Okay, so you mentioned something, Florin, that is actually important and meaningful. And what are you asking from the AI right now? To give you some ideas for facilitating this into retrospective, or how should we complete this prompt?
I was thinking, I mean, on the step 2, find the best output, because people are forgetting what they did. I was thinking of building a dashboard with the progress since yesterday, or with a list of the topics that were worked on.
Okay, so that could be a potential output.
I mean, if they forget, maybe okay, those are the, I don't know, the items that were worked on since yesterday.
Hot topics from yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it by, I don't know, by either you have some updates on the ALM tool, or maybe you have some pull request or something. I don't know. You can see what happened since yesterday until today between the dailies, and you can present this in a, I don't know, in a let's say friendly way for the people, and also with the sprint goal written in bold, and how the work contributed to achieving the sprint goal, something like that.
For me,
any other ideas?
It's more in the step 2 of actually asking AI what could be the possible solutions to this issue, right? Because
Okay.
if we are already directing it to to the board and to the solution, maybe we might be missing. Yeah, but that would be the output of step 2,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we might do this in different ways. We might ask for ideas for outputs,
Yeah.
or we might input an idea for an output and ask the AI, does this validate your our problem? I
Okay.
think Ana Maria wants to raise a question or has an idea.
Yes, so to me, the situation seems similar to someone who is lacking in engagement, is lacking in interest, and is lacking in responsibility. So to me, it would be more interesting to ask AI, how could I raise the engagement, the interest, and what could I do to make these people more responsible for their work? Because to me, it sounds that this person, or if there are several teammates, they do not really act as a team.
Yep.
If they are missing all of these fundamental pillars. So I would rather ask, what can I do to improve in engagement, interest, and responsibility? Making them responsible for their work, for their outputs and outcomes, making them understand that a team is not a solo work, but it is a collaborative work. And if one piece is not, if one piece is missing, then probably the entire chain has to suffer. So we need to make them realize that their work is important in the team, but in the same time, they also have to take responsibility for it. Then I would like to understand, why is it such a big lack of interest and disengagement? So all of these things. So I would build somehow everything I ask AI around these 3 words, which in my opinion define fundamental problems, either with that person or with the team if there are several persons acting similarly.
Okay, Ana Maria, what would you expect the AI to answer to this? What could you do?
I don't know. Let's ask AI.
Let's think. Okay, so let's ask AI. So let's
ask
give
AI.
an AI tool this scenario
Exactly.
and drive this through the LLM engine. So anyone interested to try that? So we can maybe pick the story from the top with a situation that evolved, or we can do this together if you like, and see what comes out. Do you agree?
Yeah, let's try an AI tool.
Okay. Just I need to unlock this to be able to copy the text. So my tool of choice is Perplexity, but we can use anything, and you can even pick a model if you're fond of something in particular. GPT or 5.4. Okay, it requires my login. And I will add, don't answer yet, because I haven't added any questions. So I'm just filling in the initial.
It doesn't listen to you.
He doesn't listen to me. Okay, but let's go further and let's ask him the question in step 1, right? Which is, do we go from step 1? I would like to have meaningful improvement from discussion, and what do you recommend? And then we move to step 2, to the question Ana Maria suggested. I would like to have meaningful improvements by discussion on progress towards the sprint goal. What do you recommend? And now he's looking for actionable things. So to make a meaningful improvement from shifting from what happened to what must happen in the next 24 hours to move towards the sprint goal, the most effective change is to make the sprint goal the center of the conversation. So focus the conversation of the sprint goal, it recommends. Then inspect the work and coordination towards it, right? So it even recommends a format, restate the sprint goal during the daily scrum. So we're here in this sprint to achieve this goal. Walk the board, asking on blocked items towards the goal. What happens that something is blocked that is prohibiting us from reaching it? Ask each item if each item needs to make progress to reach the goal, and so on. So that's one thing. So the right outcome for step one is actually the sprint goal itself. So center the discussion around it. Second, let's pick Ana Maria's question. Let's see, what can I actually do to improve the interest and the engagement, right? That was the more difficult part.
Yes.
It suggests making the daily scrum feel like the team's own coordination session, not the Scrum Master-led update meeting. So it suggests a switch from facilitation perspective. It should not be a Scrum Master-led event. Instead, make this feel as something that the team has control and coordination over. The biggest lever to shift ownership is to keep the discussion centered on the progress towards the goal and to create the plan for the next day. But what would that mean in a practical way? What do you think? Should I skip my daily scrums more often to make it clear to my team that they are not necessarily Scrum Master driven or Scrum Master led? Could I do that? Should I remind the team more often that it's their decision that needs to happen in order to make the the daily scrum effective? What would be some activities? It suggests changing the format.
I'm seeing that. Yeah, I'm seeing this with the changing the format. I successfully used this one-to-for-all format for the daily scrum actually, and it worked really well because when you put people in pairs, they have to talk, they have to make a plan. And afterwards, when they are in groups, they also consolidating the plan.
Okay, did this work also during daily, Florin? Creating pairs 2 by 2?
During the daily.
That's very nice.
I'm speaking about the daily.
So are these good ideas? Maybe Georgiana, Ana Maria, what do you think? Would this help? Like asking people to have pair discussions during the daily, or you missing out from the daily completely, just to teach them to self-organize for the event? What do you think?
Well, I think you as a Scrum Master missing from the dailies on a regular basis, I don't think this is something that can lead towards success, because people just get used then to ignore you even more and get used to, I don't know, it's very difficult then to work towards something without an eagle eye, let me put it this way, which maybe sometimes can keep them on the track.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe what I could also suggest, it is a bit of an extreme measure, but sometimes it works. So let them fail once, but like badly.
Allow some failure in the process.
Exactly. So allow them to fail like really badly once, and then analyze what happened.
Okay.
Because until people do not feel, and I would like you to understand, mark the word feel, until people don't feel how it is they don't really grasp the importance of.
But that's a good technique, right? So let's add it to the 1-to-4 all, or skipping occasionally. Now it's allowing room for failure. just to learn.
And then analyze it, and then
Brilliant.
analyze
And then
it,
analyze it.
and then
Okay.
exactly, and then come back to it every time you need
Okay.
to.
Good idea. So now let's say we put this in practice, and we build our next sprint with these practices during the daily scrum, and we progress, right? But while we progress, let's say we are towards the middle of the sprint, we've built some, I don't know, improvement on what we expected. Can we measure this in some way? We're half through the sprint, some dailies happen, and we did some pairing, and we allowed some failure and analyzed. We took those steps to get closer to the outcome we looked for. But the question is now, what are we measuring? Can we ask the AI this as well?
Well, I think this is quite difficult, right? If we do not have a concrete case, because it's always about a sprint goal, and it's about the backlog, and it's about how much progress we've done in order to get X, Y, Z done, right, from the whole perspective. So
yeah, let's play around. Let's see what options we have. So now he has suggested some actions to take for the daily scrum. Let's ask this question again. So how could I measure the improvement of the daily scrums once these type of actions are being made or taken, right? Being taken. Okay. So it gives us a couple of things, or a few things. Did the team actually review progress towards the sprint? So that's a yes/no question. So I could count how many daily scrums this happened and how many times it didn't. Did each developer know what they would do next? That's also a possible measurement. You can get a percentage out of it. I don't know. 30% of the people still don't know what they're going to be looking for the next day. Where blockers surfaced early, this is again a yes/no, and you could measure occurrence. In how many daily scrums have you surfaced any blockers? Maybe in 50% of them. All right, so these are all measurements. Were deep dive topics moved out of the daily scrum? This is what happens when people begin to solve problems during the daily, and we don't want that. That's taking the focus away from the sprint goal and taking it into maybe a technical discussion or something else. So we want to avoid this type of daily scrums where we deep dive. So measuring how many times we deep dive is also an option. And focusing on the adherence to the time box is how many times did we stick within the 15 minutes of the daily. I don't know how many of these are useful. Which ones would you pick as a good measurement of keeping the team aware and engaged towards the sprint goal and focused on their actions, future actions?
I think all of them are good, but I think the ones that you didn't read yet are the most essential ones, which are outcome signals.
Outcome signals at the bottom here.
Yeah, I think why do we want an efficient daily scrum?
Okay, not just for the people to talk about sprint goals,
yeah,
but to actually reach it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So yeah, good measurements would be on the outcomes of their work, not the outcomes of the daily, right?
Yeah.
But organizing their work with the daily would lead us to better outcomes overall with their work. Nice twist. Thank you, Christina. Eagle eye, talking about eagle eye, somebody saw the missing point there. Thank you for that. Okay, so we measure this now for a couple of sprints or 3 sprints, and we're not still consistent. Maybe in some sprints we reach a sprint goal, maybe in some sprints we still don't. So what could we ask of the AI now to improve on this situation? Again, we decided to focus on following the sprint goal as a discussion during dailies. We decided on some actions, the outputs, to keep the team focused. Then we measured how many times the outcomes of the daily are those expected. And now we see that the goal, actually, what we are measuring, and it's important, reaching the sprint goal doesn't happen still as often as we expect. What is the next question for the AI in step 4? The example here goes, the work is only done when the outcome is achieved. Can we ask the AI this to monitor the results and iterate?
Or how can we create consistency?
How can we create better consistency without this
As simple as that.
Okay. Suppose we reach or we achieve sprint goal. Just in 50% of cases. How do we achieve consistency? Is that right, Anna Maria?
Yes, how we exactly. Or how we can create consistency.
How do we create consistency? Okay, suppose we achieve sprint goal with the improvements suggested. Suppose with the improvements suggested, we only achieve the sprint goal in half of the times, 50% of the cases. How do we create consistency? Let's pick this one and see if our friend AI model has an answer to this. So the answer is not work harder, is to improve the quality of the goal. Maybe the goal is not formulated correctly. This is what is suggested. Or the amount of forecast work is too much to fit into the sprint. It suggests us to first interpret the 50%, so why it happens only half of the time might have different reasons behind. And then only after to improve the goal quality, like frame smaller, better formulated goals, more outcome-oriented goals. Okay. That's interesting. So we're wondering why people don't follow goals, and we end up with the conclusion that maybe they are not formulated as outcomes. That's a nice circular view towards the end of the exercise. Okay, so this is maybe the last iteration now. Suppose we are now creating better goals, smaller, clearer, and more outcome-oriented. How would we analyze what worked? This is sort of like a retrospective of the process. What's the question to ask the AI here? Any ideas?
Yeah, I assume that once you input a lot of data from what has happened during the process, right, of those improvements, AI can draw a more accurate conclusion on exactly what has worked based on input data.
It would have access to your Jira board, to your
of course,
rundown chart or whatever, or it would know better. So I could ask him, assuming you have access to all progress related info, Scrum boards, burn downs, goals achieved, etc. So assuming AI has that access to that type of information, what is the question now? What can we learn from the data?
Yeah, what would be the first 3 top tactics that drove us to the result?
So I won't expect this time the answer would be any too meaningful, right? Because this is just a suppose and play scenario. Yeah, but once it would have that access to all that information, it might provide actually really 3 top tactics based on the actual data, right? Now we don't have the data; it's just being made up or assumed by the tool. But even in this case, it manages probably on a statistical basis, like all LLMs do, to find maybe top 3 familiar reasons why this worked. He suggests goal slicing. It worked because we sliced the goal more thinner, right? Better sprint planning, calibration, and more adaptive daily scrums as coordination between people. All right. So that was actually the endpoint, right? From what we had from Jeff and Josh, that was the meaningful map, right, of what happened and what helped us and what didn't, right? We probably could map the occurrences in our boards and how many times some events happened with the achievement of the sprint goal in that period of time, right? We could map behaviors to results in this way using the tool. All right, I think we played around for a bit, and I'm very happy that some of you were still hanging around to participate in this and see if Jeff and Josh's framework actually works, right? I think we can make a point by trying to put this into our process improvement goals as well, not just products, not just creating better products, but also creating better teams or mechanisms for team improvement. What do you think? What's your takeout from this exercise?
Yeah, for me personally, definitely it was a meaningful discussion, and it's good that it's structured in this way, so it can be applicable for future issues that I would like to solve in my daily work. And I think it can be used for small problems as for even complex and scaled ones.
Yeah, so it's a nice framework of, I don't know, knowing what to ask AI in different phases of your product discovery, development, or even evaluation of your product goal results, right? But in your case, in our case here, it was not a product per se, but an achievement at team level. We can treat this with the same mindset, of course. Anything else or any other conclusion to draw on this example on how we used the framework?
So not specifically on this example, but I think in general, when we are trying to be focused on outcomes rather than outputs, the challenge is asking the right questions. So what I noticed by playing around with AI on this and various other exercises is that at least it forces us to ask the right questions or learn to ask the right questions. Because I think, at least in my experience, the teams I've worked with, in the companies I've worked with, the tendency is to always focus on what's obvious, what's the problem at hand, but not necessarily what we are fixing by fixing that problem. and where that gets us, and is it worth spending time and energy into fixing it, or is it enough to fix that problem to get to the result you need to get to? So yeah, even us this evening, we focus so much on the daily scrum, but because this is the time we had to focus on. But a team that has this situation, I'm sure they have other process issues as well that impede them from achieving their goals. If engagement and responsibility is questionable, it's not just about daily scrum. I'm sure they have that issue on other milestones and events around the way as well. So yeah, it's eagle eye view, as you said, Mihai. But yeah, it's a good
I took that
exercise.
from Anna Maria. She had the eagle eye first. Yeah.
Yeah, she did. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's definitely, for this example, it's not just daily scrum. If you're fixing daily scrum, we're not fixing the problem actually. We don't
need
have
to go deeper. Okay. So
we need to go
ask
deeper.
even deeper question or more questions. So what we learned, Christina,
Yeah.
is that AI teaches us how to ask questions, because if we ask not so meaningful questions, we would get not so meaningful results, right? In the end, that we cannot use as good as we would.
Yeah, it's a good playground to learn to ask for proper questions. That it's helpful in this interaction with the AI, but helpful, I think, in life in general.
Yeah. Great. Guys, if these are, I think, some outcomes from our conversation, I think we've spent some 30 minutes useful, 30 minutes going through the exercise as well. And we want to thank for the contribution of everyone who did this. And again, thanks to Josh and Jeff who presented the framework initially and shared a bit from their experience. I encourage you to read actually this book from Josh. It's Outcomes Over Outputs. It's quite revealing on the way of thinking that we could apply in our day-to-day work life, but in other aspects as well. And it's a book that gradually shows how asking the right questions would lead to better results. So this is something maybe to close with. Let's keep the outcomes the focus of our questions and our conversations.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us today, and looking forward for the next events, and hope we can also meet in person at some time. Have a great evening.
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you also from my
Bye
side.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.